So my number two is Home Alone from 1990,
Same
directed
suburb, basically. Yeah.
basically directed by Chris Columbus, written by John Hughes, starring Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern, Catherine O'Hara. I don't need to even tell people, but here's the log line on Home Alone. An 8-year-old troublemaker mistakenly left home alone must defend his home against a pair of burglars on Christmas Eve.
Honestly, the title's the log line. One of the
Basically.
few times where the title's like, this is what the movie's about. You don't
Yep,
even need the log line.
exactly. Plus, I don't even know if there's anybody left on this planet who's not watched this movie
Or yeah, or definitely heard of it. Yeah,
or
that's a
definitely
really
heard
good
of it.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of riffing off and building on what you were saying, this is my sort of marketing of suburban life from the US. And I was saving that for this movie because this is what I watched growing up, as most people, and this world of a beautiful big house with a large family, all the possible access to you, beautiful snow, Christmas, big tree, a beautiful church. Like all of this sort of felt like what living in America or maybe the West even might feel like. And it mostly felt quite joyous and such. But then over time, as I watched this movie over and over again, I don't know if they intended this, but to me, there are lots of like deeper themes to this that to me represent America.
Mm.
So the spirit of independence and consumerism. Like I always think about this, that if I were left home alone as a kid, I would be crying my eyes out. I would be petrified, terrified. And this kid is excited, confident. He wants to go to the store, buy stuff for himself, and basically enjoy all the things that he didn't have access to or was asked not to indulge in too much in.
Mm-hmm.
Probably he did have access to all of it, but he was just asked not to indulge in. That's not what would occur to me, and that to me is very signature of, I think, the American value system and experience in my mind, of that of individualism, independence, and consumerism, versus I grew up in a very group society. So if
Mm-hmm.
your group and community was somehow, snatched away from you or you were abandoned from it, you almost felt like you were lifeless. And it would take a lot more courage. So on one hand, you can label it as consumerism and maybe even selfishness, but on the other hand, it's what gets him through. Because if I were left in that house, I would be dead on day one.
Oh
I would be
no.
attacked by the burglars,
Oh,
and I
they
wouldn't
weren't
know how to
gonna
defend
hurt.
myself.
They would never hurt you. They were just nice
Probably
guys. They were
not.
just
Or
trying to
I
take your
would
stuff.
just starve to
Starve to
death
death.
after a
Right.
while, or out of depression. Who knows?
Yeah.
I know this is still a movie that we're talking about. I don't know, most kids would actually behave this way, but I think that thematically does
Hmm.
make sense to me of how I view America, where again, there are two sides to it. You can look at it with a slightly negative tone, but I also think it's what gets him through. And confidence and the ability to own actions, whether you have what it takes to prove it, fake it till you make it.
Which
That's
he
the
does.
thing she does, which I
Yeah.
think is definitely is something that I view in Americans. And maybe a version of that is there in India too, because when you have a bajillion people and not much access, you have to sort of finagle your way
Mm.
somehow. A perfect metaphor of that is being stuck in traffic in India. If you stay in
Oh
the
my,
line,
yeah.
you're never going to get through.
Right,
So
right.
you have to somehow, circumvent cows and dogs and cars and trucks and what have you to get ahead. So I guess it exists everywhere, but I don't know. This movie always stands in that light to me. And then
Mm.
I guess the other thing, and I haven't even passed it on to you because I'm assuming you watched Home Alone. So I'll just
Yes.
do my thing and then give it to
Yeah.
you.
Yes. I have seen this film. Yep.
Which is, I think, big love and big emotions. It's something that, because I sort of grew up in a group society which is very family oriented, and the common thing was that, oh, people don't live like this in the US or in the West, where they, care for their kids till the end of day. And look at them, they've let their kids out of the home at age 14 to make something of themselves.
Right.
And first of all, I think that's great, because in India, there are 35-year-olds living at home because they're not married. And I don't think that's right either. But I think this movie does have that sense of big emotion and big love. Like,
Mm.
the embrace that happens between the mother and the son when she's back, or when they all realize that in the plane that he's not on, it's very heightened, but it's also what I associate, that people are, in a weird way, here don't express true emotions, but they also express a lot.
Mm.
It's a weird contradiction that I always think about.
I like the themes that you've uncovered in this film. You bring this up, and I sort of was seeing that too, but I almost like flipped. It's like,
Mm,
yes, he is expressing his individuality throughout this film when he is left home alone, but the cost is literally like physical pain and, at some
yeah,
points like kind of sadomasochistic
it's selfish for sure.
behaviors on these two robbers who are not initially trying to cause him any kind of physical harm at all. And that is the cost of you take that individualism to an extreme. That is, you have to hurting other people comes with that too. It's actually funny too that you mentioned this, because there's a YouTube channel that I like to watch, and there was a video they did on Home Alone once where they were talking about all the deleted scenes and things that didn't make it in. And, there was a couple speeches by the robbers and giving them motivation to why they were doing this. And they ended up cutting them out because they didn't want to make them too sympathetic. But there's a speech Joe Pesci gives about the reason why they're robbing all these houses is because of the commercialism that's displayed at Christmas, and that everyone's forgotten the meaning of the holidays. It's not about being with your family. It's about buying things or going off to Hawaii on vacation. And he's angry at that and that commercialism. And that's why he's taking all these things from the rich people in this neighborhood, which is actually funny because that does hit on the theme that you're talking about too. Again, they cut that out of the film because they wanted you to dislike the robbers. You didn't want any backstory there, but it's a really kind of interesting, and I never knew that existed or ever even thought about the motivation of these robbers. They're just trying to steal stuff. But there was this nice little speech about that. I was like, oh, it is kind of, and then I do feel bad for them. And I'm like, you know what? If I was Kevin, I'd be like, yeah, or Macaulay Culkin's character, I'll just take all my stuff. My parents probably have insurance. We live in this really nice neighborhood. I'd like let them in and let them take whatever they wanted, and then just claim, oh, they beat me up or whatever when my mom, who forgot me at home, finally comes back. Yeah, it's I've definitely seen this film before. I've actually never liked this movie. Even as a kid. I've grown to sort of like get it now of like, okay, this is a mainstay of just movies. So I'm not going to like turn it off if it's on. But yeah, I just have a thing against kids when they're left alone. They're trying to be adults. I like the kids just to be kids. And I'm like, why would you try to do all these things? I mean, I get why, like, mimicking and all that. You may have a good point of like things you can't have. Then you try to like act like a little adult when you're a kid. And I just never found that cute. Even as a kid, I remember seeing this movie like, yeah, I don't know, it wasn't that good as a kid. But I think you touched on those themes too, like are really kind of resonant in what this movie does kind of reveal about America. I agree with that. I just sort of take it as like as showing more of like negative things about it, even with the fact that the family forgets him and don't care enough about him enough to give him attention. And all these
so
things
lost
because
in
they're
their own
in their own thing. They're all selfish in that way. And, probably working all the time too. Who knows what the dad does to afford a house like that, but I'm sure it's something that keeps him very busy. And he's never really there for Kevin, even though obviously the end of the film, the mom does come back and, there's that resolution with also Kevin sort of learns through the not homeless guy, the old man, right? It becomes about family too, because he misses his daughter and wants to reconcile with them. So there is this like getting together with your family, and that's maybe all that matters. But Kevin doesn't get punished for what he does to the robbers, which is kind of extreme.
Well,
but anyway, it's a kid's movie. I'm not gonna
I'm not gonna go that far and like take the side of the robbers. I mean, they are after all robbing.
They got insurance. I don't know. I like Joe Pesci. Maybe that's the thing why. Too. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say, I mean, a lot of people live and die by this movie. I actually like the second one better.
Oh, really?
One, I don't know.
Okay.
I find that a little bit more fun, but yeah, it's also a kids movie. It's like a mainstay. Yeah. It's even weird to critique a movie like this because it's such a part of our growing up.
Oh yeah,
and all of that. And it's still very joyful, and he's great. Like, how many kids can hold the screen that way, an entire movie on their shoulders? Chris Columbus is amazing, brilliantly
he
constructed the whole thing, and the score and all of it. Like, this movie could be just a hack job, but it isn't.
Right,
it's like brilliant in all of its technical departments and performance and all of it. So, it's amazing. But yeah.
Yeah, special shout out to like John Candy's performance in this is like one of my favorite. Like he was barely in the movie. It's like 2 scenes, but he just does such a great job of just adding heart. Like anytime he comes into a movie, I'm a big John Candy fan, as we've talked about a couple of his films already. And actually, another thing we should mention too is the amount of John Hughes we've covered on this podcast. I wrote the list down: Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Beethoven, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, The Great Outdoors, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and now Home Alone. Like, he might be one of our most covered creatives, and I didn't really realize it till I was watching the movie. I was like, wow, like we've just covered a lot of John Hughes, and it is someone who just was a big force at the time when we were both growing up. And it's just interesting too that it was cross oceans, that all these movies are connecting with you, because it wasn't like all these movies were mine or yours. We put a mix of them. Honestly, I think it's almost 50-50 with who, which of us brings these films here. So I thought that was kind of interesting that he really hits on some Americana or childhood, like something, but he definitely was a big, strong, creative voice when we were growing up.
I totally agree. Like, I think, that's the other thing, like the fact that we don't even know that we've been talking so much about his movies is sort of very John Hughes in its way. That's
totally,
sort of, underrated MVP of the 80s.
Yeah.
But I think it's American, but it's also human, That's the thing. Like, the older I get, the more I feel like a lot of this stuff is universal. And when the truth is captured, I didn't even watch all of these movies when they came out. I watched them when I was much older. But because I'm a child of the 80s, even though I grew up in a totally different part of the world, I have a connection to that time and how people felt, no matter where they were. So, and the fact that John Hughes gets to the truth of that time and those people, they connect.
Yeah, there's something universal there. That's interesting too, because I grew up with, all the films we mentioned, I saw probably all of them before I was 15. Yeah, and you didn't, and that they're still connecting to you. Just again, it speaks to the power. This is turning into a John Hughes podcast, but it speaks to the power of him. And I do think there is some America wrapped up in that too. Honestly, like all of his films are something about American society, for better or for worse, that he's wrestling with. That I think still it resonates to this day. I don't think these movies, at least the ones that I mentioned, are dated. He has another set of films that I actually don't really know very well, like the high school stuff. I didn't watch those growing up, and I don't really have much of a connection to those because I haven't seen them. But these are the ones that I mentioned, more the goofy, kids versions of what his output. Definitely, sit with me still.
Yeah, you could think about this in a negative way, but you kind of touched on kind of the relationship with the old guy and such, that there are enough things here to kind of round things out. Like, you can cheer for Kevin, but you also know that he, is making some poor choices. He is not the best to his siblings or his parents. And he also has to grow up and learn some life lessons. And even in this heightened world, kindness and family, those are the values that he's trying to underline, which I think are universal, but they're also very American. They're all in this tapestry of like grand marketing of, it's all great, we have everything, but there's also family in there, there's also joy in there, there's also the big emotion in there. So
really good point. I still side with the Wet Bandits though. And actually, in mentioning all these other movies, I'd love to see a crossover of Beethoven and Home Alone, to see Kevin McAllister with that dog, and both of them just totally chaos everywhere. Would be really funny.
I would watch that.
I would definitely watch that. Okay, that's an idea. We'll pitch that. No one take that. Well, that's one of we'll add that to the list of movies we have to produce. We just need the rights to both franchises and mash them together. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.